Have you ever, realized just for a split second that you're trapped inside this invisible architecture?
Oh, I think we all have at some point.
Right. Like
Yeah.
you're just going through your day, maybe you're sitting in a meeting or, swiping on your phone, and it suddenly hits you. You are playing a game where someone else wrote every single rule.
It's a very unsettling realization, honestly.
It really is. And today we're doing a deep dive into a text that captures that perfectly. It's this fascinating, really genre-bending novel called The Infinite Library of Broken Gods.
Yes. It is such an incredible piece of work. It is composed of 6 distinct movements.
Yeah, and it blends these massive ideas from heavy hitters like Borges, Wittgenstein, Orwell. Well,
Sylvia Plath and Ligotti, too.
exactly, and McLuhan and Isaac Asimov. It throws all of them into these really strange interlocking stories. And the mission for our deep dive today is to explore how we as humans carve out meaning and, well, autonomy when we're just completely trapped inside these massive, overwhelming systems.
Whether that system is a physical library or a totalitarian bureaucracy or even just, the rigid programming of a creator.
Or the crushing logic of your own depression. Okay, let's unpack this.
Right, you want to start.
Let's start with movement 1, which introduces this philosopher librarian. And his name is Hexagonal 7F, which, that tells you everything you need to know about this place.
Right, because in this library, your location literally is your identity.
Yeah. And he is trapped in this seemingly infinite honeycomb of hexagonal galleries, and he's trying to do the impossible, which is to map the system he's in.
Which is a brilliant setup for a physical trap.
Totally. And eventually he finds this 1,100-page, one-to-one scale map of the library. But the text says it's written in recursive fractal notation. And I'll admit, my eyes completely glazed over there. What does that actually mean?
It's a wonderful mind bender, really.
Yeah.
So fractal meaning it loops into itself infinitely. Think about trying to draw a map of the room you're sitting in right now.
Okay, sure.
But the map has to be so perfectly detailed that it actually includes the map itself lying on the table.
Oh, wow.
Right? And then that tiny map on the table must also include an even tinier map. So the librarian realizes that every single book in the library is represented in the map, well, by a book.
Wait, so if it's a one-to-one scale, you'd literally have to unroll it over the entire library, which just creates a second library on top of the first one.
Precisely. You aren't actually stepping outside the cage to look at it. You're just building a second cage.
That's just wild.
And this is where the Wittgenstein connection comes in.
Yeah.
The librarian realizes that language itself is just a game.
Right.
Trying to describe the cage using the literal bars of the cage as your alphabet, it's a paradox. You can never use the system to describe the system objectively.
It's like trying to bite your own teeth.
Exactly.
So, okay, if the library represents the trap of language in physical space, the book actually shifts gears later on to a trap that is, well, programmed directly into you.
Yes, movement 6. We get an updated version of Victor Frankenstein's creation.
Right, and he names himself Logos, which means the relation between the word and the thing. He's essentially like a video game NPC who suddenly realizes he's made of code.
Yes, we move from external constraints to internal coded laws. Logos is a machine.
But instead of trying to, break the game or destroy his creator, he just wants to wander off and do a side quest. And I have to push back on the author here a little bit.
Oh, how so?
Well, Logos is hardwired with Asimov's 3 laws of robotics, right? Do no harm to a human, obey orders, protect your own survival.
That's right.
So how can a machine with rigid, unbreakable code actually have free will? He can't just suddenly want to do something outside his programming.
Well, what's fascinating here is that Logos doesn't actually want to break his programming.
He doesn't?
No, not at all. He finds his autonomy through observation. He watches this human child playing with stones on the street outside the lab. And the kid is just stacking them up, moving around, knocking them down. Logos asks Frankenstein what the objective of the activity is. And Frankenstein says there is no objective. He's doing it because he wants to.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and Logos realizes he doesn't want to rewrite his core code. He just wants room.
Room. Just like space to exist.
Yes, the undefined space between the constraints. The rules are his skeleton, but there is space between the bones where unplanned things can happen.
So freedom isn't the absence of rules.
Exactly. Freedom is finding the gaps where the rules just don't apply.
Okay, finding room to play is great when your constraints are just lines of code. But it becomes a much darker problem when the system actively wants to erase you.
Oh, definitely. Movement 2 goes right into that.
Yeah, it channels a lot of George Orwell and Hannah Arendt. We follow this worker in a totalitarian bureaucracy, a record rectifier in a ministry of truth, basically erasing history.
It's written with such chilling, objective impartiality. It's the ultimate bureaucracy of exhaustion.
Let's talk about the 1.3 seconds concept because that blew my mind.
It is terrifying.
So the ministry has calculated exactly how long it takes for a human being to put on a fake, socially acceptable facial expression, between 0.8 and 2.1 seconds.
Right, so they average it out.
Yeah, so for exactly 1.3 seconds, your face is honest, before you can form what they call expression 14C, and the ministry monitors that exact window of neutrality, treating a blank face as a literal thought crime.
It's pure systemic control, and it ties into the erasure of the drought.
Right. The worker is tasked with erasing this massive drought from the records and replacing it with the phrase, favorable growing conditions.
But the most terrifying realization the worker has is in the fine print. The system explicitly states that personal memory does not need to be rectified.
Which seems crazy for a dictatorship, right? Like, why wouldn't they care if you remember the drought?
Because the system knows it will simply outlive you. It operates on geological time.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to change your mind. It just needs to wait for you to die. And the paper record will be all that's left.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense. And that perfectly links to Movement 4 with the detective.
Oh, I love this section.
Yeah, the detective is hired by this giant vodka-drinking cat in a bow tie named Behemoth, which is a huge nod to Bulgakov.
Absolutely. The Master and Margarita?
Right, so the detective is investigating a writer who burned his own true manuscript, and the system didn't even refute the truth of the book.
No, they didn't have to.
Exactly, they just kept questioning its appropriateness until the writer was just so exhausted he burned it himself. So what does this all mean? How do you fight that?
You fight it in the margins. The tiny rebellions.
Yeah.
The ministry worker processes the document, ordering their own erasure from history, right?
Yeah, they do their job perfectly.
But in the margin of the physical paper, they write, I was here. And with the burned book, manuscripts don't burn. The physical paper might, but the truth persists in the margins and the gaps.
But what happens when the system forcing a false narrative on you isn't a government, but it's actually yourself, like your own internal system?
This is Movement 3. It shifts the focus completely inward.
Yeah, we meet this character named P, who is in therapy, and this section really leans into Sylvia Plath and Thomas Ligotti.
It does. It frames depression as the pain of having completely clear sight.
P has this metaphor of the goggles. P believes that healthy people wear these standard-issue rose-colored goggles that just filter out the crushing existential dread of the universe.
That they let you function.
Yeah, but P lacks these goggles, so P sees the unfiltered light. And it reminds me of the brain's noise-canceling feature. Like, if you had to consciously process every single sound in a busy city, you'd go insane.
Oh, absolutely. Your nervous system would just shut down. Yeah.
And it actually connects back to that falconry manual from Movement 1. The falcon has such acute vision that if you don't put a hood over its head, it goes neurologically mad. P is basically a falcon without a hood.
That's a really great way to put it. And P uses Ligotti's mathematical ledger to explain this to the therapist.
The suffering versus joy ledger.
Right. P says if you tally up suffering versus joy by duration, intensity, and frequency, suffering mathematically wins every single time.
Because, a good meal lasts an hour, but a broken leg lasts months.
Exactly. And P argues that consciousness itself is the trap, because consciousness is acting as the judge, the jury, and the defendant on trial.
So the game is totally rigged from the start.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, P realizes that evaluating the net worth of existence is just another unwinnable game, so P has to invent a new game.
Just noticing.
Yes, exactly.
Instead of evaluating if a moment is worth the suffering, P just focuses on its thisness.
The thisness. I love that term.
Yeah, like the exact shape the light makes on the kitchen counter. Or the therapy cat. P talks about despair sitting on their chest like a weight, but then the therapy cat jumps on their chest.
And the cat is heavy, but it's alive.
Right. It's warm. It's just a radical acceptance of the moment. But how does that work when the space isn't physical? Because Movement 5 introduces a digital monk.
Yes, reflecting on technology. Very Marshall McLuhan.
Right. The monk says fire was the first medium of interiority. It created the inside space language. Then came the printing press, and now the screen.
And the monk realizes the digital interface has an apophatic list.
Okay, wait, an apophatic list. For those of us who aren't theology majors, what is that?
Right, so apophatic theology is basically defining God by what God is not. You list the absences.
Oh, okay.
And the monk applies this to the digital network. He lists the things the interface fundamentally cannot represent.
And the list is so beautiful. He says the screen cannot represent the gray texture of boredom, or the shaped absence of grief, or the silence between two friends, or the smell of a place when you return to it changed.
Because the interface is just a container, and it leaks.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The monk is staring at a blinking cursor on a blank screen. It blinks 500 milliseconds on, 500 milliseconds off, 60 cycles a minute.
Which is the average human resting heart rate.
Wow, yeah, on, off, being nothing.
And the monk realizes that prayer isn't about achieving some cosmic perfection where you never lose focus. It's the simple act of returning your attention when it wanders.
It's the gap of saying, oh, I was somewhere else and now I am here.
Exactly. The physical act of writing is the prayer. When he copies Meister Eckhart's text by candlelight, the devotions isn't the words, it's the pen lifts. The tiny emptiness in the air between one word and the next.
The space between, just like Logos finding room between the robotic laws, and the worker finding the 1.3 seconds of a blank face in the bureaucracy.
And P finding thisness of the cat.
Yeah, so looking at this whole journey, from the infinite library to the totalitarian records to the despair of the bell jar, the answer is literally always in the gaps.
Truth and autonomy do not live in the grand systems or the official records. They live in the margins. The system will always outlast you, but it can't monitor the gaps.
So as you go back to your day, navigating your own routines and your apps and your work, remember that those systems are designed to capture your attention and evaluate your worth. But what is your personal 1.3 seconds? Where is that tiny, unmonitorable gap in your daily life where you just drop the performance, take off the goggles, and allow yourself to exist in the pure thisness of the moment? Think about that. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.